What an obedient crowd we have here today. This hearing will come to order. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our nation's capital. I am so pleased to convene this biennial hearing in conjunction with the Breakthrough T1D 2025 Children's Congress. It's wonderful to host you and your families at the Senate Appropriations Committee. As the founding co-chair of the Senate Diabetes Caucus, I have long promoted diabetes research as one of my top priorities. Your advocacy for life-changing research to prevent, treat, and ultimately cure type 1 diabetes inspires me. Looking out at this field of blue inspires me, but looking at your faces inspires me even more. Over the years, I have met so many wonderful children living with type 1. Individuals such as my summertime neighbor, Ruby Whitmore, who is going to be testifying today, Carolyn Cordoza from Brunswick, Maine, who is 6 and joins us as a delegate, Aiden Sweeney, whom I first met when he was only age 4, and now he is age 23. There's so many more, including our New Hampshire delegate, Rachel White, who is also testifying today. And there are adults who are living with type 1 as well, including Nicole Wiesendunger, a teacher who has lived with diabetes for more than 37 years and happens to be married to my nephew. I told Nicole I'd work her in. More than 170 delegates have traveled to Washington from across the United States and 5 other countries to share with members of Congress their personal stories of what it is like to live with type 1 diabetes. And I want to tell you how much your personal stories really matter. They motivate and educate senators and House members to get involved and to support funding for the research that is necessary to deliver new treatments, more effective technologies, and one day a cure. Let me tell you about my very first meeting with a family who had a son with type 1 diabetes. I was a brand new senator. It was back in 1997. They came to my Portland, Maine office, and this little boy looked up at me and he said, "I wish I could just take one day off from having diabetes. My birthday or Christmas, just one day." But of course, he could not. And type 1 diabetes today is a disease that one can never outgrow. But I am confident that that is going to change. Just this morning, 6-year-old Carolyn Cardoza from Brunswick, Maine, told me that she is a warrior for the cause of finding a cure for diabetes. So these personal stories are why I started the Bipartisan Senate Diabetes Caucus in 1997. Since we started the caucus, and it's been bipartisan from the beginning, because diabetes doesn't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent or a Green or what. We have made some real progress. It has been exciting. Federal funding for diabetes research has increased from $319 million in 1997 to more than $2.3 billion. That's due to your advocacy. And that includes a $10 million increase enacted just last year. These investments are yielding results. One program in particular has led to technologies that will allow better control of diabetes. That is the Special Diabetes Program at the National Institutes of Health. And how lucky we are to have Dr. Rogers joining us again this year. This critical program provides $160 million a year for type 1 diabetes research, supplementing the regular appropriations for diabetes. In 2017, the Special Diabetes Program led to the development of the first ever FDA-approved artificial pancreas that can control blood glucose levels automatically. And I'm curious, how many of you here today are using the continuous glucose monitor? All right, that's wonderful. That shows the difference that the research can make. More recently, clinical trial data resulting from an SDB-supported clinical islet transplantation consortium have contributed to the development of the first ever stem cell-based research and treatment for type 1 diabetes. This was developed through research by Dr. Doug Melton at Harvard University, who has 2 children with type 1 and was determined to find a cure. So here's the exciting news, which Dr. Rogers will talk about further today. Of the 12 individuals enrolled in the clinical trial, 10 of them no longer need insulin after 1 year. Imagine that. So today we can be ever more hopeful that one day we will live in a world where type 1 diabetes can be cured. Another important component of the program, which I know is of particular interest to the senator from Alaska, supports prevention and treatment services for American Indians and Alaskan Natives who experience type 2 diabetes at nearly 3 times the national average. The Special Diabetes Program must be extended against this year, otherwise it expires in September. We worked together to secure the first funding increase for the SDP in 20 years, but we've got to extend the program altogether. I've introduced legislation with the co-chair of the caucus, Senator Jeanne Shaheen, to reauthorize this program through the end of 2027. So as you make your visits today, please ask members to co-sponsor that bill so that the Special Diabetes Program does not expire in September. Let me close by saying how it's truly inspiring it is to look out and see all of the children who are here today, their parents and loved ones who have come to DC to share your personal stories and to continue advocating for increased research funding so that we expedite, we speed up the search for a cure. Your passion and hope for a cure gives us the confidence that it will happen. Thank you so much for being here today, and I will now turn to my friend and colleague, the Vice Chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, Senator Murray, for her opening statement. Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. And just a point of personal privilege before I speak about this topic, I do want to acknowledge the tragedy in Texas, and our thoughts are with the families who lost loved ones, and we thank all of our first responders who rushed into danger. I know that all of us here are ready to help Texas recover and rebuild, and I say that on behalf of all of us here in this committee. And with that, thank you again, Chair Collins, for again convening this really important, impressive hearing to talk about the NIH Special Diabetes Program's critical work that supports life-changing research for millions of people who are living with type 1 diabetes, and in particular to hear from all the kids and young adults who are living with type 1 diabetes who came all the way here today to talk about why this program matters. I know all of you have traveled from all over the country. I don't think anybody made it here from Washington State. It's a long trip, but, oh, in the back, awesome. Great to see you. And I want you to know that your voices make a huge difference in making sure that Congress takes action to treat and eventually cure type 1 diabetes. It's important that all of us understand your experiences with diabetes, which is, of course, what this hearing is all about. And, of course, it is important that we improve our understanding of this disease itself, which is what the NIH Special Diabetes Program is all about. This program has a great history of accomplishment, getting new artificial pancreatic devices to market, bringing us new medication to delay type 1 diagnosis, and improving care for patients with serious complications, and more breakthroughs that we all know are just around the corner. This work is life-changing, which is why I do want to really express my concern today about the fact that the Trump administration is terminating or freezing more than 260 grants from the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases. The care and research that people are counting on is really in jeopardy, and your voices are important today. 4 of those canceled NIDDK grants are in my home state of Washington, including a clinical trial looking at blood pressure in 200 hemodialysis patients and a grant to train the next generation of researchers. And I know that at Columbia University, President Trump terminated funding for research on how type 1 diabetes affects bone strength in kids. I don't think anyone here needs us to explain why that's so important. We need to strengthen bones and avoid fractures so everyone can run and play and compete in sport and live life to its fullest. So I want to be clear here today. Trump does not get to decide funding for diabetes. Congress does. And I know members on both sides of the aisle are committed to making sure we maintain strong investments in this work. But we need more than just talk right now. We need to stand up and reject what is happening right now to biomedical research at NIH, and I know that my colleagues understand that as well. So again, I really want to thank all of you for being here today, because when it comes to defending this research, when it comes to pushing back against these kinds of cuts and funding freezes that we're seeing, the most effective tool we have is our voices, like the advocates in this room. The strongest way all of you can push back is by speaking out, just like you're doing today, sharing your stories, which are so important, and make sure everyone knows what is at stake. And I know that with the incredible advocates like all of you, we're going to keep making progress, and we're going to keep investing in life-changing research and eventually cure type 1 diabetes. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I mentioned that Senator Shaheen from New Hampshire has been my longtime co-chair of the Senate Diabetes Caucus. We worked together as a team with many of our colleagues who you see here today. She is delayed because of a session in the Senate Armed Services Committee. She will be joining us later, but she's asked that I quickly read a brief opening statement before we turn to our witnesses. This is from Senator Shaheen. I want to extend a warm welcome to all of the witnesses and the more than 170 advocates who have traveled to Congress today to participate in this year's Children's Congress. Your tireless advocacy for yourself, your families, your friends, and everyone living with type 1 diabetes, including my own granddaughter, is truly inspiring. While I regret that I cannot be with you in person, I do want to take a moment to recognize Rachel White from Northampton, New Hampshire, not far from Maine, who, she didn't write that part, I added that part, who you will be hearing from shortly. Rachel's story is one that has deeply moved me. As a teenager, she balances a demanding academic schedule, collegiate-level athletics, and dedicated advocacy work, all the while managing the daily challenges of type 1. She will share what that means in her own words, but let me say from my family's experience, it requires extraordinary discipline, strength, and resilience. To my colleagues, I urge you to listen closely to these advocates. Their stories are powerful reminders of the urgency of our work. We must do more to support people living with diabetes, starting with increased federal investment in research through the NIH and the Special Diabetes Program. Thanks to these programs, we stand on the brink of a cure. This is the moment to deepen our commitment to these advocates, not to abandon it. We must also finally pass comprehensive legislation to make insulin affordable for every American, namely our bipartisan Insulin Act I have co-authored in previous Congresses with Senator Collins. Thank you again for sharing your stories and for being here today. I wish you all a meaningful and memorable Children's Congress. Thank you, Senator Shaheen. Thank you. We will now turn to our witnesses. Our first witness, I'm proud to welcome from the great state of Maine, is Ruby Whitmore. Ruby is 16 years old and was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 5. I have known Ruby literally her entire life. She is a rising junior and plans to major in biochemistry in college with the goal of working in the emergency medical field of trauma surgery. Ruby, thank you so much for making the journey down from Maine to be with us today. Our next witness, as I mentioned, is going to be Rachel White from Northampton, New Hampshire. Rachel is also 16 years old and was diagnosed with type 1 at age 11. She is a nationally ranked tennis player who aspires to play tennis at the collegiate level. Rachel, thank you for being here today to share your story. After Rachel's testimony, we will hear from Katie Bone. Katie was diagnosed with type 1 at age 11. Today, she is a professional rock climber, and her passion for climbing led her to local Ninja Warrior competitions. She made her debut on American Ninja Warrior TV show, becoming the youngest champion in the American Ninja Warrior Women's Championship history. She's now working hard to qualify for the Olympics. Katie, thank you for being here today. Finally, we are delighted to welcome Dr. Griff Rogers. Dr. Rogers is the director, this is a mouthful, of the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases, or NIDDK, at the National Institutes of Health. Dr. Rogers has led this institute since 2007, and he's here today to talk about the research advances made thanks to federal funding for diabetes research and the Special Diabetes Program. Dr. Rogers, I want to thank you most sincerely for coming back every single one of the children's congresses that I have chaired since you have been head of the Institute. You've been here to update us on the developments. I thank you for your dedication to this cause. Thank you all for joining us. With that, we are now going to start with Ruby's testimony. Thank you, Ruby.
Good morning, Chairwoman Collins, Senator Shaheen, Ranking Member Murray, and members of the committee. My name is Ruby Whitmore, and I'm a 16-year-old student from Old Town, Maine. I'm honored to speak with you today, not just as someone living with type 1 diabetes, but as a student, an athlete, a volunteer, and someone who dreams of becoming a surgeon. Diabetes runs in my family, so it wasn't a total surprise when one summer my parents noticed the signs and took me straight to the doctor. I was just 5 years old. Now, more than 10 years later, I can say I've learned how to manage the disease, but it's also changed my life in ways that most people never see. Managing type 1 diabetes isn't something I ever get a break from. Even when everything is going well, it's always there, like an extra layer I have to think about that others don't. Playing sports makes it even more complicated. I've had to learn through experience how to balance my blood sugar before a game or during a race, and there have been times when I've had to sit out and treat a low in the middle of practice or a game. It's frustrating sometimes because I don't want to worry about numbers, carbs, or whether my sensor is still reading correctly. But being open about those challenges has helped me take control of them. It's made me stronger and more confident in who I am. Despite the challenges, I've never let diabetes define what I can or can't do. I play soccer on both school and travel teams. I run track. I serve as my school's Best Buddies chapter president. I even had the opportunity to volunteer at Northern Light Eastern Maine Medical Center, working with patients in both general care and neurosurgery. My goal is to become a doctor, a trauma surgeon, because I want to help people the way my care team, especially my endocrinologist, Corey Webb, helped me. He has made a lasting impact on my life, and I hope one day I can do the same for someone else. I volunteer in part because T1D has given me perspective and empathy for those in need, who also face extraordinary challenges, often without the support and resources that my family and friends have provided. I want to take a moment to talk about my family. My dad also has type 1 diabetes, so I've grown up knowing what it looks like. This has put a great deal of stress on my mom, who is always there for us. She's the one not so quietly making sure I'm okay, reminding me to bring sugar tablets, staying up when I sleep through my pump alarms, and just being there every day. Even though I think of myself as independent, I know I wouldn't be the person I am without her support. She's the reason I felt safe enough to be confident in living with this disease. The burden placed on families dealing with type 1 is often invisible and often overlooked. I've been lucky to have access to the latest diabetes technology, like continuous glucose monitors and advanced insulin pumps, which have made it possible for me to live a full, active life. Advancements like these have been made possible by the Special Diabetes Program. I want to thank you for the recent extension of the SDP because it supports groundbreaking research and brings us closer to better treatments and one day a cure. I never want a young girl to think she can't play sports because of her insulin pump. I never want a family to skip doses or ration supplies because of cost. Everyone living with type 1 diabetes deserves the chance to thrive. Your support makes that possible. Thank you for your time, and thank you for investing in a healthier, better future for people like me.
Great job, Ruby. Thank you. Rachel, would you please deliver your testimony?
Good morning, Chairwoman Collins, Senator Shaheen, Ranking Member Murray, and members of the committee. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be here today. My name is Rachel White, and I'm a high school student, a nationally ranked junior tennis player, and I live with type 1 diabetes. My diagnosis came just before I turned 12. My mom noticed something wasn't right. I was eating and drinking water nonstop, but I was losing weight. I had just grown an inch, but I had also lost 5 pounds. I started waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, which had never happened before. At the doctor's office, no one was immediately alarmed, but my mom insisted on blood work, and that's when everything changed. My blood sugar was over 600. My A1C was over 14. I had type 1 diabetes, and my life as I knew it was suddenly and completely different. At 11 years old, I had to learn how to manage a disease that has no cure and never takes a day off. That was the scary part. A typical day for me now starts at 6:30 a.m. I eat the same breakfast almost every day because it helps keep my blood sugar stable. I do the same for lunch and snacks, even though it gets boring. Because steady blood sugars help me get through my intense school and tennis schedule. I train for tennis anywhere from 1 to 3 hours a day. It's a true passion of mine. My goal is to eventually play tennis at an elite college. But tennis with T1D is a real challenge. I carry juice with me at all times because I tend to have low blood sugars when playing. I check my blood sugars on changeovers, not to get an advantage over my opponent, but to make sure I am safe. Having low blood sugar can make me feel dizzy, unfocused, and there's a risk of passing out. While most players think about winning the next point, I have to think, am I crashing? Do I need juice? Did I take too much insulin? Adding this extra challenge to an already mentally demanding sport is difficult, at times very frustrating. However, I choose to move forward. Every single day, I am making complex, high-stakes decisions while trying to live the life of a normal teen. That's why I am here today to ask you to please keep supporting the work that makes life with T1D a little more livable and one day curable. Thank you for extending the Special Diabetes Program through September. The research the SDP funds is the reason we have better devices, smarter insulin pumps, and more hope than ever. I hope you'll extend the program for years to come so it can continue to deliver treatments and cures that will improve the lives of millions of Americans like my own. My family and I truly believe that with your support and improvements in technology, a cure for this disease in the near future is very much a possibility. I'm grateful for the tools I have now. I recognize I'm very fortunate that my family has been able to support me in this journey. But I dream of a future where I don't have to carry juice in my tennis bag, explain to a chair umpire that I have T1D, check my blood sugar in the middle of a math test, or wonder what will happen if my insulin doesn't arrive on time. Thank you, Senators, for taking the time to listen to my story and for supporting all of us living with type 1 diabetes. Speaking in front of you today has been an honor and something I will remember for the rest of my life.
Thank you very much. Great job. Katie.
Good morning, Chairwoman Collins, Senator Shaheen, Ranking Member Murray, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story. When I was diagnosed with T1D at age 11, my very first question to the doctor wasn't, why me? It was, can I still climb? Climbing has always been my passion, and I decided right away that T1D was not going to stop me from achieving my goals. That mindset has helped shape everything I've done since then. From earning a spot on the youth and elite U.S. climbing teams to becoming the youngest champion in American Ninja Warrior Women's Championship. I've learned how to compete at the highest level while managing my diabetes around the clock. But T1D is relentless and carries an enormous toll on my body and my mental health. It isn't something I can pause or ignore. It's often the simplest things that aren't visible to the outside world that are the most difficult. Sleep is a constant struggle. I consistently wake up to alarms or unexpected highs and lows, and when you're not sleeping well, you're not recovering well, and that directly affects my ability to train, perform, and stay healthy. I've competed in China, Europe, and all over the world, and every time I go, I have to figure out how to manage my blood sugars with unfamiliar food, different time zones, and new schedules. I've had to carry my own food across continents. And as a female athlete, hormone cycles throw in another unpredictable layer. There are weeks when everything I've figured out no longer works, and I have to readjust all over again. People see me win a national title or run up the wall on TV, but they don't see the 100+ decisions I make every day. They don't see me stopping in the middle of training to treat a low, or the days I feel completely wiped out from a night of bad blood sugars. They don't see the toll it takes, because a lot of us with T1D carry it well. We have to. These challenges are very real, but I am still inspired by the progress that has been made and hopeful about the potential cures to come. Today, I wear a continuous glucose monitor on my arm. It gives me a blood sugar reading every 5 minutes and lets me see trends in real time on my phone. That technology means I don't have to stop climbing or competing just to poke my finger. I also use an insulin pump to stay in range during training, competitions, and even during overnight filming for American Ninja Warrior. The development of this technology did not happen by accident. It is a direct result of policymakers like you, who have funded the Special Diabetes Program. In fact, a new study finds that the SDP has led to at least $50 billion in federal healthcare savings. That's more than a 10-fold return on your investment. That's why I'm here to strongly urge Congress to renew the SDP. The program funds the science that makes T1D more manageable, and it brings us closer to cures. For millions of Americans with type 1 diabetes, the SDP means hope. It means the development of cell therapies that can replace insulin-producing beta cells. It means disease-modifying therapies aimed at preventing, slowing, halting, or even reversing T1D progression. This week at Breakthrough T1D's Children's Congress, I've had the opportunity to meet so many young people like Rachel and Ruby, who are also leading amazing lives because of research breakthroughs. We all imagine what our lives will be like when we have cures. I know we will get there thanks to you. Thank you again for hearing my story and being our champions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie, for your testimony. Dr. Rogers, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Chair Collins, Vice Chair Murray, Senator Shaheen, and members of the committee, thank you for the invitation today to testify and for your long-standing support for type 1 diabetes research. Research supported by the Special Diabetes Program, or SDP, has dramatically improved the health and quality of life of people with type 1 diabetes. This progress would not be possible without the support of my fellow witnesses, as well as the people here today, those you represent across the country. All of you are true champions in advancing diabetes research. Thank you. The longstanding federal investment in diabetes research through the SDP has enabled us to take on challenges, drive innovation, and address research gaps beyond what we could do with support with NIH's regular appropriations. We've been able to enroll more patients in longer trials to maximize our research investments. This approach has yielded incredible progress. For example, SDP-supported research has culminated in the first ever FDA-approved preventive therapy for type 1 diabetes, the first ever FDA-approved cellular therapy for type 1 diabetes, and multiple new FDA-authorized artificial pancreas devices that have become the standard of care for many people living with type 1 diabetes, including the children who you polled in the room today. These therapies were just far off goals when I first testified about SDP-supported research in 2007. Today, they are realities that directly benefit people with or at risk for type 1 diabetes. These advances were made possible thanks to your long-term investment in research, our close partnership with organizations like Breakthrough T1D, and the dedication of our clinical study volunteers and their families. While we celebrate this progress, we are also vigorously building on it. A major current research goal and a high priority for people affected by the disease is to find a biological cure for type 1 diabetes. This involves understanding how insulin-producing beta cells are lost and how they can be replaced and protected, including through transplantation. Additionally, scientists must work to develop novel ways to protect transplanted cells from the attack by the body's immune system. NIDDK's ongoing research complements industry's clinical trials, testing cell replacement strategy in people. Some of these trials use techniques that have their roots in SDP-supported research, including cell products and so-called encapsulation technologies that protect transplanted cells from rejection. We're confident that these complementary efforts will one day culminate in approaches to replace lost beta cells, cure type 1 diabetes, and eliminate the burden that comes with the disease management. I'm also pleased to report that SDP-supported research provides benefit beyond type 1 diabetes. For example, the artificial pancreas device developed with SDP support for the management of type 1 diabetes was recently approved for adults with type 2 diabetes. Recent SDP extension have enabled the launch of or expansion of ambitious studies related to diabetes complications, such as heart disease and diabetic foot ulcers. Understanding these complications is not only important for people living with type 1 diabetes, but additionally benefit those with type 2 diabetes. Conversely, we're using our knowledge from treating type 2 diabetes and applying it to type 1 diabetes. For example, SGLT2 inhibitor medications are improved to manage blood glucose levels in type 2 diabetes and have heart and kidney protective effects. Determining if these medications are safe and effective for people with type 1 diabetes could provide much needed tool for preventing multiple complications. While we celebrate these and other incredible successes made possible by SDP, we will continue to pursue cutting-edge research, such as applying artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies to type 1 diabetes research in new and exciting ways. With continued research, we know we can achieve our ultimate goal, preventing and curing type 1 diabetes. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions when the time is appropriate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. Ruby, I want to direct my first question to you. First of all, I was truly moved by your tribute to your mother, and I know what an important role that she's played in helping to keep you healthy. Your family, unlike some others, has had a lot of experience with type 1 diabetes, including your dad. But a lot of your friends, your coaches, your teachers have had no experience with it. Could you talk to us a bit about how you educate your coaches, your teachers, your friends about your special needs?
That's a really good question. Well, the first thing I think of, my soccer coach for school is actually type 1 diabetic.
Really?
So he always has stuff. But my other coaches, they're all very understanding. And I just tell them, I say, I'm diabetic and sometimes I need to take a break. And they just tell me, they're like, that's fine. Just tell us. And I have a couple of my other coaches keep stuff in their bags now just because I've told them. I think really you just have to tell people about it because they're not going to know if you don't tell them. That's not something somebody ever thinks of. You don't see somebody sitting on the sideline and think, oh, they're diabetic. That must be why they're out. I think you just need to inform people. And yeah, my friends are really good about it too. Just telling people. Yeah.
Dr. Rogers, I was thinking of Ruby's family and others where there are maybe more than one member of the family with type 1 diabetes. You mentioned that one of the breakthroughs that we've had is the medication that can delay the onset for someone who is at risk. Could you explain that a bit more to us?
With the support that we've received from SDP, actually we've developed a reclassification, if you would, of type 1 diabetes, realizing that it exists in people who are at genetic high risk. Some triggering event leads to their immune system to attack the beta cells, ultimately with the production of antibodies, but still at a level with normal blood sugars. But then that's ultimately followed by a period of the blood sugar being abnormal, and then ultimately to clinical type 1 diabetes. What the funds have been able to allow us to do is actually to look for therapies that could prevent the onset of clinical type 1 diabetes by treating them in earlier stages. Initially, when the blood sugar is not completely abnormal, but still high, and then an earlier stage when only there's a presence of these antibodies. And in fact, a number of years ago, following the work that was done in a consortium that we developed called TrialNet, a drug, teplizumab, was actually developed with this intended purpose. And it has shown for the first time that one can delay the onset of type 1 diabetes for at least 3 years in individuals who receive this therapy. 3 years may not seem like a lot, but imagine not having to inject insulin and manage the disease and the other issues. And we have on the drawing board and a pipeline in this TrialNet other medicines that we hope that might have that same effect, either alone or in combination. But teplizumab is the first FDA-approved therapy for that treatment.
We have a lot of members here today, so rather than going on to the next question, I'm going to yield to Senator Murray.
Thank you very much, and thank you. Really impressive to hear all of your stories. Doctor, let me just follow up quickly on that, because I heard Rachel say that as most people who are diagnosed are feeling severe symptoms before they're diagnosed. You're talking about early diagnosis. How are we educating doctors to look for that early? How are we making sure families get that information that they need to be tested? And how are we making sure that people can afford that?
Well, in terms of the education of individuals with type 1 diabetes or those at risk, a number of groups, including the NIH, NIDDK, Breakthrough T1D, has done a yeoman's job of public education in this field. The professional societies, the American Diabetes Association, the Endocrine Society, and many others understand the work that we're doing and make sure that their physicians who are specialists in this area are well aware of it, both once it gets FDA approval, but even to enter patients into clinical trials to make sure that other advances become available. And, you know, when patients typically present, they may present with something called diabetic ketoacidosis, which is really a very troubling condition. So if you know that you're at high risk and you enter in one of these particular trials, and you're able to get a early indication that this may be the path, entering someone in such a preventive trial could very likely prevent them from developing that very serious.
I think one of the things is to make sure all parents and doctors and physicians and people who see young kids are giving them the information they need to get in early. So I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Rachel, I mean, all of you are really impressive, and I really am impressed that you're athletes. I do have a niece who is type 1 diabetic, and she was told by a coach in high school that she couldn't play because she was diabetic. I'm certain other young people have heard the same thing. What's your advice to young people today to get past anybody who says you can't participate because of that? You seem to have accomplished that so well.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely way harder. There's many more factors you have to think about when you're being an athlete. And for me, I tend to go low because I'm always running around on the court. Tennis is very physical and it's only you. So I would give advice to younger people that you can do anything you want and not to let diabetes stop you from going to play soccer or going to play tennis or doing really anything you want, because diabetes definitely makes things more challenging, but there's nothing you can't do.
Yeah. And you talked about invisible challenges, I think, Ruby. What are those invisible challenges, so we all know?
I think that, the invisible challenges, especially with such a busy schedule, like I know Rachel has too, your free time is just taken up by wondering if you have to change your site or running out of insulin and changing your site the 5 minutes you're home between school and practice. And just thinking about everything all the time, especially now. A lot of you guys are probably driving now too. Just thinking about your blood sugar before you get on the road and thinking about how much time you're going to have before your practice or school if you're low and can't drive. Yeah. So I just think that's a really big thing.
Things other people don't see.
Things other people don't have to think about.
Yeah. Katie, impressive. The youngest American Ninja Warrior. All of you guys can be Ninja Warriors. So you're looking at one right now. It's great to hear your story and to see the challenges that you've overcome as well. How would you describe the advances in science and medicine that made the most difference for you to be able to accomplish that?
I wear an insulin pump and a CGM, and it has been...
CGM, explain to
a continuous glucose monitor, and it has been life-changing for me. I'm able to go to the gym and I don't have to poke every 10 minutes when I feel a little bit weird. In climbing competitions, we have to be in isolation because we can't see the climbs beforehand, and we are not allowed to have phones. So I have to lock my phone and go get somebody if I want to look at it, which is hard, but it's made it so much easier that I don't have to spend the 10 minutes poking my finger to check my blood sugar, and I can focus on warming up and competing, because as it is, that takes a lot of mental energy, and so does diabetes. So it's kind of eased to that for me and made it so I can go out there with knowing my glucose and having a little bit ease of mind with that as well.
Okay, very good. And thank you to all of you as well, to be here today to talk about this and make the public more aware of all the things you can accomplish and all the work we still have to do to make sure we continue the research. So thank you very much.
Senator Hyde-Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Ranking Member Murray. And I tell you, Ruby, Rachel, Katie, y'all have been so impressive today, and you've really made an impact on me. All of you sitting here, these faces and the challenges that you live with, you are really, really incredible human beings, and I know you will continue to be incredible human beings. I wanted to recognize my breakthrough T1 delegates from Mississippi, T1D delegates. Where is Lindley and KJ from Mississippi? Are they in here? Okay, we have a meeting later with them. Maybe I'm not seeing them. But we do have a meeting later with them. But I just so appreciate your attitude and your courage. And moms and dads, buddy, hats are off. You are superstars, no doubt, in what you do every day. I wanted to address this to Rachel and Ruby. As we move closer to finding a cure to type 1 diabetes, which is the goal, April the 15th, President Trump signed an executive order addressing insulin and making it more affordable. And just so significant on all the research that he is supporting there. But what do you each look forward to the most when that day finally arrives? When we're looking at these TV screens and it says, we have a cure for type 1 diabetes. What do you look forward to the most?
Personally, for me, tennis is a huge part of my life. So that would be the best part for me because it's always hard having to check your blood sugar and making sure you're having enough juice in your tennis bag, or if you're going up from excitement before a match, or if you're nervous or anything. And just being able to not have that anymore, it'd be just such a relief for, and also not just for me, for people who can't afford insulin, who some people who pass away from not being able to afford insulin, and that's very sad. And I think that once there is a cure, it'll save so many people's lives and just make the lives of millions of people way more easy.
And Ruby, when you see that broadcast, that news flash, what do you think would be your celebratory moment?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it would just be not having to worry about it anymore, just being free of it. I feel like it'd feel like, I don't know, just taking off a burden that's in my life and so many other people's lives. And I recognize that I'm very lucky to be able to be here, but also be here as a healthy diabetic who can afford insulin and who has supplies and who has resources and has a support system. But as Rachel said, many people don't. And I just hope that they would be able to get the cure as well.
Great answers from both of you. Dr. Rogers, I'm going to turn to you now. How can we improve the early detection of the disease to ensure those who are eligible for the drug can receive treatment to delay its onset? How are we addressing that and identifying those folks?
Thank you, Senator. We are involved in a number of studies, of course. People who have a first-degree relative with type 1 diabetes, of course, as you've heard, some of the panelists are themselves at risk. But there is a large number of individuals, for example, who do not have any family members who develop these symptoms that you heard, and unfortunately sometimes end up in the emergency room with diabetic ketoacidosis, and that's their first sign. So just continuing to educate the professional staff, people in the allied health fields about these critical complications or signs and symptoms early on. We've developed with the SDP support a fairly large network called TrialNet, in which we're able to screen not only individuals who are at high risk, but other patients who may have related autoimmune conditions who may also come in contact. And having them in these studies sometimes gives us a very early indication that they are at risk. But we really do have to continue our efforts, and I have to say our partner in Breakthrough T1D have really made this awareness campaign one of their vital challenges, and I think they've been equal to the challenge. They've been letting people be quite aware because there are things to do in terms of prevention today.
Wow, what a great breakthrough. And I just want to thank you for all you have done.
Thank you.
And my time is out, but I tell you, I want to be your cheerleader. I want to be your supporter, and everybody in this room that's dealing with this, you've got members of Congress that are in it with you. We don't know the anxiety that comes with this every day like you do, but we know what our job is, and our job is to find a cure, and we're not going to forget that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm now delighted to welcome the co-chair for many, many years of the Diabetes Caucus in the Senate, Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Chair Collins, and I appreciate your letting me sneak in since I'm in the middle of a defense bill markup, but I really wanted to be here to thank all of you who are members of the Children's Congress for being here today, for your advocacy every day, and for your willingness to speak up about the need, as Senator Hyde-Smith said, to find a cure. And none of us forget that at any time. I have Very much appreciated all of the work that the Diabetes Caucus has done over the years and the leadership from Senator Collins to provide additional funding and to improve treatments. And clearly we have more work to do. Thank you to Dr. Rogers and to all of the panelists for being here and for your testimony this morning. I'd like to begin with Rachel, since she's from New Hampshire, and ask what advice you would give to someone who's just been diagnosed with type 1.
Yeah, I still remember the day I was diagnosed. I was 11 and I got taken out of school, and luckily I wasn't hospitalized, which was honestly kind of surprising because my blood sugar was very high. And I would just tell people who are diagnosed that I know it's very scary when you're first getting all this information about there's so many different factors, pricking your finger and giving yourself insulin and counting carbs. It can be very scary, but it definitely gets better the longer you go. And I remember the first week was, I can barely remember because it was just, I ate so much food and yeah. But it definitely, I've been a diabetic for 4 years now, so I would say I'm definitely more educated, and I'm here today, so it's proof you can really do anything, even with this disease.
Would either of the other witnesses like to comment on that question? Ruby?
No, I think Rachel covered it. I think that's
Great.
That's pretty much what I was going to say. Yeah.
Katie, anything to add?
She did a great job explaining it, but it is terrifying at first, and it is incredibly scary. And even for me, 8.5 years later, it is still hard, but I had to figure out how to make it work because I wanted so much with my life, and I still do. And I wouldn't necessarily change what happened to me because it has given me so many incredible opportunities, one of them being here. And a newly diagnosed person also has so many incredible opportunities and a bright future if they want that. So yeah, it's just not giving up and figuring out how to do it because it's hard, but you're still here and you can make an incredible life out of it.
Thank you. Thank you to each of you. Excuse me. Dr. Rogers, I'm concerned that this administration has terminated or frozen more than 260 NIDDK grants in 29 states that total more than $120 million. In addition to these cuts, the proposed NIH budget would slash NIH funding and potentially gut NIDDK by combining it with other institutes. So can you speak to how important it is that we continue to fund diabetes research, including ongoing trials and prevention initiatives, and why that should be prioritized and protected from reductions?
Well, Senator, we really, some of the major accomplishments that we've discussed today is one very good example of why your continued support for ongoing research in diabetes, in particular in type 1 diabetes, is so important. We're really on the cusp of some major breakthroughs, especially related to cellular therapies and finding a biological cure. We have studies that I've told this committee about before. TEDdy study, the environmental determinants of diabetes of the youth. What is it that triggers the autoimmune disease? We required studying some 425,000 at-risk kids to enroll 6,000 from the age of birth to 15 years. And I'm happy to report that the very last patient turns 15 this year. And so we're already on the cusp of understanding what some of these triggers are. And that's the kind of work that we have to roll up our sleeves and really continue, because that's where the cures will manifest themselves. And so I couldn't give you a better explanation of why this support has been so important, and ongoing support will be especially important.
Well, that's an excellent explanation. Thank you very much for the great work that NIDDK continues to do. And thank you to all of the delegates from the Children's Congress for being here.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Senator Collins, and thank you, Senator Shaheen, for your leadership on this very important issue, and to the delegates that are here at the Children's Caucus. Thank you. Thank you for not only being here, but your advocacy on behalf of so many, and to the witnesses that have shared your stories with us here in the Senate. Know how important it is to have your voices, your fears, and your determination shared here. It encourages us, it motivates us to do more for you and with you. So thank you for that. Dr. Rogers, I wanted to ask you, you just mentioned the environmental contributors to type 1 diabetes. We know that American Indians, Alaska Natives are more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes 1.5 times more. Senator Collins has mentioned the special diabetes programs for Indians. It's really quite remarkable, the gains that we have seen with that focus. And it's so hard because when you come from an area where in your tribal communities the prevalence of diabetes may exceed 50%. I mean, that is really alarming. And these disparities have existed and persisted for generations. But what we've been able to see with the special diabetes program is really helping to reverse these trends. It's not only helped reduce diabetes-related complications, but led to a remarkable 54% reduction in new diabetes diagnoses among American Indian and Alaska Native youth, which is extraordinary. It's also contributed to a 50% reduction in end-stage renal disease among Native people with diabetes. So you mentioned the TEDdy study and the fact that it's almost completed after 15 years. That's significant. Are there other strategies or other efforts that are underway to include diversity of races and ethnicities where we know that there's greater prevalence of diabetes?
Sure. Thanks for that question, Senator. And you're absolutely right. The special diabetes program aimed at American Indians, or SDPI, has been a sort of a program that is run in conjunction and in parallel with this SDP program. There, the aim is the implementation of the provision of care for individuals with diabetes. Now, what we've learned, and in large part due to the SDP, in conjunction with the Centers for Disease Control, NIDDK has a program called the SEARCH program, in which we are looking for diabetes in youth and adolescents, including type 1 diabetes. But something very remarkable, you mentioned the high prevalence of diabetes among American Indians and Alaska Natives. But there's been an increasing incidence of type 2 diabetes in youth and adolescents that has been uncovered by that SDP-supported SEARCH study. And I have to say that type 2 diabetes is even more aggressive, I have to say, than type 1 diabetes in youth. The therapies that we have for adults with type 2 don't work particularly well in youth and adolescents with type 2 diabetes. And the aggressiveness of the disease in terms of the time of diagnosis to the time of complication is much more accelerated. And so these, what we're learning now from the SDP program, we think we can potentially apply to type 2 diabetes in youth as well. One final thing I'll say, I don't want to dominate all of your time, but we really are very pleased with the success in the implementation of these artificial pancreas technologies. But there are certain areas that industry is a little bit reluctant to do trials to determine the success of that. And that's where we come in with SDP support. So, for example, women who are pregnant there haven't been that many studies to determine the efficacy of artificial pancreas technology. Individuals who come from low income or low educational attainment, this is somewhere that we're stepping in. And it turns out that in the preliminary study, just minor modifications to this technology allows it to be utilized for a greater percentage of the population, including individuals, Alaska Natives and American Indians. So that's just one example or two examples of where we're moving in this area.
Promising. We need to do more. There's too many that are counting on all of us to again find this cure. Thank you very much, and thank you to our witnesses.
Thank you, Senator Murkowski. Senator Durbin, you've been very patient. Thank you.
As the designated male senator, I noticed at one point it was 7-1, 8-1, and I saw Senator Collins smiling. It's exactly the way you like it. It's an honor to be here and to participate in this, and I'd like to mention a few things. About 10 years ago, I went out to NIH and I met with Dr. Francis Collins, who I consider to be an American hero for all his leadership at that agency. And I said, what can I do to help? And he said, what we can do is make sure that every year we have a steady increase in research funds for so many different diseases. If you can give me 5% real growth every single year, we'll light up the scoreboard with all sorts of things that are going to make life better for young people who are here and for other people. So I came back here to the Senate and Appropriations Committee, which I've served on for a few years, and I enlisted the help of a number of people. My friend Patty Murray, who was here earlier, as well as Roy Blunt, who was a Republican senator from Missouri, who chaired the committee, Senator Collins, who was part of it, Lamar Alexander, a Republican from Tennessee, and we managed to, over the span of 10 years, increase NIH funding from $30 billion to $48 billion, just steady increases, for $18 billion over 10 years. And good things started being reported. Now, that's the good news. Now, the bad news. President Trump's budget for this next year eliminates all of the increase that we put in. It goes back to $30 billion, where we were 10 years ago. And that means we're walking away from research opportunities that can lead to cures and can lead to an improvement in lives across the United States and around the world. And here's the good news. You're looking at the first line of defense to make sure that doesn't happen. People who are gathered here, the senators, have the ultimate decision as to how much money is going into medical research for diabetes and for other purposes. So we need you to help us by encouraging our colleagues to join us in this struggle to stop the president's budget and to put in place a real investment that will make a difference. The second point that I want to make is one that is somewhat personal. Well, one of the justices on the Supreme Court is Sonia Sotomayor. Some of you have heard of her. T1D, type 1 diabetes since age 7. She's a fan of baseball, Yankees fan. She said to me, I'd like to go to a game in Wrigley Field and watch the Cubs play the Yankees. So I took her and a couple friends to the game several years ago, and she was testing herself during the whole game, but didn't stop her 1 second. The point I want to make is the highest level in the U.S. of courts and justice is the Supreme Court, and there is a woman in that position who since age 7 has been dealing with type 1 diabetes. She's a great asset to our country, as you will all be. The last point I want to make that I think is very important is that we've had an impact already. Decisions have been made in terms of funding agencies. And Dr. Rogers, can you tell me how many NIDDK employees have left because they were fired, placed on administrative leave, or accepted a buyout since the beginning of this year?
Thank you, Senator, for the question, and thanks for what you said prior to that direct question about the role of the Senate in terms of the budget. We appreciate those increases. And as my boss, Dr. Bhattacharya, mentioned at this hearing, the president's budget does recognize a cut, but this is really the beginning, as he said, of a close negotiation and discussion with members on the final budget. with respect to the number of workforce, some of the reductions were intended to centralize some of NIH's administrative function. I can't give you a precise number because retirements continue, but we're doing the best with the numbers that we have to try to make sure we're as efficient as possible, getting funding out to our investigators and making sure that the success that we've made so far don't take a back step.
Can you tell me how many NIDDK grants have been suspended or terminated this year?
Well, in terms of overall terminations, I really, again, can't comment on the specifics of that because, as you're aware, some of these terminations are currently involved in appeals and litigation. I'd have to get back with you on that, but I think and in fact, some of these efforts are government wide, so they are well beyond what NIH can control.
Doctor, I don't want to put you on the spot. You're a friend and an ally, and we've worked together over many years. So I'm going to set this line of questioning. But to the audience, I want to make it clear. There have been dramatic cuts made in grants, some related to type 1 diabetes, and there have been termination of people working in this agency who have critical expertise for the future. If we're going to stop this, we've got to stand together, both political parties, and say that's the end of it. Research is part of making America great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you. Senator Britt.
Thank you, Chair Collins, for hosting and holding this important hearing. And thank you to all of you for being here, being a part of it, lifting your voice, telling your story, and working to make change. Ruby, Rachel, Katie, incredible. Absolutely incredible. And to all of you, I know each of you have a story that in telling it will inspire others, will change lives, and will push research and development forward. I think we have 2 Alabamians here, do we? Potentially. Matthew? Awesome. Okay, look, when I was reading about you, your quote, "Live fully and never let diabetes define you. You are so much stronger than it is." Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And is Meg here by chance? Oh, I heard you just got your back handspring. Amazing. How old are you? 9? That is incredible. I'm not sure that I could do one at 9. I mean, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, for lifting your voice, for making sure that all of those with T1D and Alabama are heard and seen and across the nation. You two inspire me and all others, and I really appreciate you being here. I want to thank the researchers. Dr. Rogers, you'll have done an incredible job. When you were in front of this committee back in 2023, we had a really good exchange, and you shared with me that Alabama has one of the highest rates of gestational diabetes in the country. We also went on to discuss the fact that when a woman does have gestational diabetes, that it increases the likelihood that she will ultimately have diabetes and that the infant will as well. My question to you is, what are we doing? How is NIDDK supporting research on how best to manage diabetes during pregnancy and to ensure that the health of mothers and children are at the forefront of this research?
Thank you, Senator Britt. As you or some may be aware, current practice in obstetrics and gynecology is to do an oral glucose tolerance test, usually in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy, to determine whether a woman has diabetes, gestational diabetes. And we know, as you just indicated, that having diabetes, gestational diabetes, puts that mother as well as the child that she's carrying at risk of subsequently developing diabetes in the future. Treatment at that level may be too late because the period of time of which dysglycemia or high levels of glucose have occurred may be present a month, 2 months, 3 months earlier. We've started a study called Go Moms. Of course, everything in government has to have an acronym, and that's an acronym that stands for determining glucose levels in gestational diabetes. And we're putting on these continuous glucose monitors in the first trimester.
Okay.
To determine exactly when the dysglycemia. I'm pleased to report that the very last patient since I spoke with before you in 2023 has just delivered this month that child. And very similar to the TEDdy study, we hope to have the results of that analysis looking at these complex pictures that occur on the CGM within the next 6 months to a year. That will inform us when one potentially should be intervening, and then one can then to determine whether that earlier intervention has a positive benefit, both in terms of the mother and with longer follow-up, the infant.
Thank you so much. And look, in my remaining minute, I was heartened to read the new potential cures for type 1 diabetes that were published in the New England Journal of Medicine a few weeks ago, and I'm sure everyone in here shares that enthusiasm. As a policymaker, I want to make sure that potential cures for T1D don't take us down the same road as insulin. So if you look back at insulin when it came to the market in 1923, but over 100 years later, it is still unaffordable for so many. And so how do we make sure that we balance creating an innovative place in research and development where people are rewarded for that, but not at the expense of being able to get these incredibly important drugs or treatment to people nationwide?
Sure. Well, NIH obviously doesn't have a particular role to play in pricing of insulin or other drugs for that matter, but our role is ultimately in developing cures. Of course, people with type 1 diabetes and a substantial number of people, even with type 2, require insulin to live. And our goal is really to focus on developing a cure so that insulin, their own cells are producing the insulin as the example. And we have developed a series of other drugs early on that have gone to industry that can stimulate the insulin production even in the remaining cells. That's where we stand.
Okay.
Our goal is to better understand and to develop treatments, preventions, and curative strategies.
Thank you. And Chair Collins, just last thing, I want you all to hear this from all of us. This is an issue. There are many issues that you see in the news that unfortunately divide us along party lines, but this is not one of them. And Democrat, Republican, we all stand united in making sure that we have the research and the treatment and the availability of these things for each and every one of you. And if you will, as a parent myself, I have a 15 and a 16-year-old. I have a dear friend who has more than one child with T1D, and watching what all she does to make sure that her child is successful and that they have what they need and that they're ready. It's a constant process. And so will all of you incredible delegates join me in giving a huge round of applause to your parents who work day and night and make sure that
Thank you. Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank you and Senator Shaheen for your long-term advocacy with the Diabetes Caucus. To our witnesses, thank you so much for being here to share your stories. And it's not often that the Appropriation Committee has a standing room only audience. I'll say hi to the people in the overflow area also. I know that we have so many here, and I just really appreciate the way you advocate for the Special Diabetes Program and the critical research on type 1 diabetes supported by the NIDDK. We have made tremendous progress on new and better treatments for type 1 diabetes. And every day we are closer to a cure. And that's because advocates like all of you here today who have pushed the Congress to increase funding for this research. And I was glad that Senator Durbin was here earlier to talk about the history of our efforts in Congress to increase funding for the NIH, but also to outline the threats that are faced right now. And I want to be very serious about those threats. Every month of this year, NIH is spending less on biomedical research than it did last year. And at the end of March, NIH had spent $1.7 billion less than through the same period last year. In mid-May, it was $3 billion less than the same period last year. And now, by the end of June, NIH has awarded nearly $6 billion less in grant funding. NIH has said that its plan is to award 40% fewer grants this year than last year, which lines up with less and less funding going out the door each month. Our witnesses here today have taken on tremendous challenges in their lives, so I have no doubt that you can handle a tough question. So I'm going to start, or just ask you, Katie. Thank you again for being here. What would you like Congress to know as NIH plans to reduce the number of new research grants it awards this year by 40%? What do you think cutting research would mean for children with type 1 diabetes?
That it'll be longer until we have a cure and easier ways to manage this. The technology we have now has made it where I can sleep through the night, but it's still hard. And when there is a cure one day, that means I'll get to sleep through the night and not have to worry about it. That means I can go to training and not feel really terrible because of this. And I can go to competitions and not work harder than I've ever worked in my life for years to not perform because of this, because that's happened many times. And to get to show up and be fully me and get to show everybody all of the hard work that I've done. So it means getting to live a even fuller life than I am now and getting to achieve the goals that I have. And my everyday being a little less hard.
Thank you. Dr. Rogers, at a hearing last month with Dr. Bhattacharya, I pointed out a major change the administration has made to the way NIH is now proposing to fund grants by forward funding half of them in the first year. This scheme would dramatically reduce the number of grants NIH is able to fund by the thousands across the institute. NIH can do this unilaterally, effectively making billions more in cuts to research unless Congress steps in. It's why I've been raising the alarm now for months about delayed NIH funding, as I just described, because NIH is either going to not spend funds that Congress has appropriated or rush funding out the door through this new and haphazard scheme of forward funding that will result in devastating cuts to research funding this year and next year. So, Dr. Rogers, how will diabetes research be affected if NIDDK awards 40% fewer grants this year than last year? And what will that mean for patients with type 1 diabetes who are anxiously waiting for a cure?
Well, Senator, thank you for your question. We are doing our best to spend all of the money that Congress has provided to us. And I would note that the budget for the special diabetes program is extended in the president's budget. Dr. Bhattacharya, I have to say, is committed to ensuring that the U.S. remains the global leader in research. And as he pointed out when he testified to this committee, really the efforts that are underway in terms of the discussions that are ongoing with Congress to try to make adjustments and come up with final decisions is something that is going to take ongoing effort, and I really applaud him for what he's doing. Obviously, more funds allows for us to do more, which is why the special diabetes program has been so effective. It's apart from our normal appropriations. But we are committed to do with what we have in as most efficient way as possible moving forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Moran.
Chairman Collins, thank you very much for this hearing. Generally in the Senate, I feel like I'm at least the same age as my colleagues. I don't feel old. In today's hearing, I feel significantly older than the audience, but I'm delighted that you're all here, and your presence makes a difference. It highlights for us on a regular basis the importance of medical research, and it's always useful for us to see the individual lives that are impacted. Things can be about numbers and they can be about dollars, but in order to get our attention and get the necessary action on our part, it's useful to see that humans, our friends, our neighbors, our constituents, our family members are impacted. So I appreciate all of you being here today and making the case for sufficient resources necessary. And while Senator Collins has not yet introduced her bill, she has announced the intended introduction. And Senator Collins, I won't say that I'm going to co-sponsor the bill until I meet with my juvenile diabetes kids from Kansas so I can tell them first. But trusting your judgment and your capabilities and your expertise and knowledge that you and Senator Shaheen, your dedication, there's a likely supporter from Kansas for the passage of this legislation. And so, again, delighted. There are many things about working in the United States Senate, being a member of Congress, that bring challenges to them. This is one of them, but this is the circumstance in which most of us, if not all of us, get significant reward when we see the opportunities we have to make a difference in people's lives. And I've said numerous times when we've debated and discussed funding and support for NIH, the business that we're in, and it's the same business we're in this morning, is to provide hope. Hope that there's a brighter future, hope that there's fewer people affected by diabetes, hopeful that the cures and treatments are more effective, and that we can rid ourselves, our families, and our children from juvenile diabetes. So I'm really pleased to be here and lend my support to this effort. Dr. Rogers, you've been an expert, provided your expertise. I thank you for your public service and commitment to finding cures and treatments. And tell me, if you would, you've been here since 2007. What's the most impactful advances that in understanding and treating type 1 diabetes that you've had in your tenure? But more importantly, tell me what the future looks like.
Well, thank you, Senator Moran, for that question. I think I would just highlight a few, some of which I mentioned in my opening statement. The idea now in this period of time that we actually have a drug available that's FDA approved that can prevent by at least 3 years and a substantial number of individuals the development of clinical type 1 diabetes, I think is a very important advance. One that we hope to replicate because we have, on the drawing board or in the pipeline, a series of other drugs that be used either alone or in combination that might yield equivalent or perhaps even better results. Having cellular therapies now to be a biological cure is something that I'm very excited about, and that possibility to report to you perhaps in the 2 years from now or maybe 4 years from now of that success is very important to me. This TEDdy study that involved following these 8,000 kids, we have 5 million samples that the kids and their parents have generously provided to us. It's already giving us ideas. We know, for example, even before we do the final analysis, we have been able to detect proteins in the serum of kids who are at high risk that may determine or predict several months in advance the likelihood that a kid will develop clinical. So to get these kids into preventive studies is very important. And sort of moving forward, thinking about using your own pluripotent stem cells to get them encapsulated. We're working with chemical engineers to develop a way to expand and to get these cells so that the antibodies don't get in to attack it as it did in the first place, but to get the insulin out. That's really extremely exciting. We're taking a page from the oncology and the immunologist field. They're using something that you may have heard of, CAR T cells, and applying that technology as a way to prevent the ongoing autoimmune disease, potentially in individuals with type 1 diabetes, from attacking either their existing cells or potentially transplanted cells. That's something that I really look forward to reporting to you in the upcoming meetings. But I'm very excited about these results. And I have to say, again, with a lot of thanks and appreciation for the Special Diabetes Program, because this would not be possible at all without your ongoing support.
Thank you. I usually hear CAR T cells in regard to cancer research and cures, and it's nice to know that the potential opportunity that exists here, because we've seen such significant outcomes, improvement in outcomes in cancer.
Thank you.
Doctor, thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Moran. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Chair Collins, and it's great to see all of you. Thank you for convening this hearing. Great to see the Children's Congress delegates filling this room. Dr. Rogers, thank you also for your leadership. And I received letters from two Marylanders who are part of the Children's Congress. One is from Garrett Cohn, who I look forward to meeting later today, who said, and I'm quoting, "I was diagnosed with T1D when I was 2. I rely on an insulin pump and continuous glucose monitor to keep my blood sugar in range. I must monitor them all the time." Then I also received a letter from Andrew Manitos, who said that the day after my 7th birthday, I found out I had type 1 diabetes. Having type 1 diabetes is not easy. I have many sleepless nights. I have to miss class, sports, and even have to go to the hospital if my blood sugar goes too low or high. But even with type 1 diabetes, I don't slow down. That was the overall message, that as long as we make sure that all of you have what you need, you don't have to slow down either. And I want to thank the Ruby and Rachel and Katie for your testimony. I have just one question. I don't know which one of you is in the best position to answer it, but based on what Andrew Manitos said, the challenges he faces with whether it's sports activities or other school-related activities and having to balance that with dealing with type 1 diabetes. How do you go about juggling that? And would you be able to do what you do without the advances that we've made so far?
I mean, it's incredibly hard every single day to get up and deal with it. And without the advances that we've had, it would be significantly harder. It would be doable, and everyone here could still be successful, but it would be a lot harder, and it would be a lot more mentally taxing, as it is. Diabetes is mentally very, very hard every single day. And personally for me, I've had a lot of anxiety and depression due to it. But being able to see my blood sugar in real time and just easily give myself a little bit of insulin has made that a lot easier for me.
Thank you. And I think the personal stories all of you bring to this are really essential to giving us an understanding of why all this is so important. Dr. Rogers, I heard your earlier testimony about how you believe that we've made a lot of progress, but we're also on the cusp, as you were just saying, of additional progress. And of course, we all hope to find a cure. But I assume that if you saw a significant cut in your resources, it would make it harder to achieve these new breakthroughs. Is that not the case?
Well, Senator, of course, the more You have. I frequently tell my staff every other year we have an initiative, or every year we have an initiative meeting for 2 years from now. And I tell them that no matter what our budget is, it's better to have good ideas and no money than to have money without any good ideas. And so we're always in a position in which we have to prioritize what we do to ensure that we continue to be successful. We may have to cut back, we may have to slow down or maybe not start something new, but we have to make sure that the progress that is achieved doesn't fall behind. And I remain committed. I think it's when you enroll people in clinical studies that you have to see it through completion, particularly if they look very promising. And so that's obviously a priority that I have.
Understood. And look, obviously you need good ideas, but you need the resources to match the good ideas, or good ideas just sit on the table.
That's
right?
correct.
And I want to make sure that there are not good ideas out there that could lead to a cure that we're not providing the resources to pursue. So I want to thank you for the work you do. I want to thank all the delegates here. And I will say, Senator Collins, I was proud to co-sponsor your earlier reauthorization and look forward to co-sponsoring the next reauthorization. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, Senator. Senator Ossoff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for convening this hearing. It's powerful to be in the presence of so many young people. Thank you for being here with us and for holding elected officials accountable through your presence and your example. And thank you to our witnesses as well. Dr. Rogers, NIH collaborates with CDC on the special diabetes program, correct?
That's correct, Senator.
And have you had positive working relationships with many of your colleagues at the CDC?
Very positive relationship. I mentioned one earlier on, the search for diabetes in the youth, which has been funded through this special diabetes program. And it's not only detecting that there has been over time an increase in the incidence of type 1 diabetes, but also in type 2 diabetes. What I was taught when I was in medical school, we called it adult onset, but we're seeing this now in kids 10, 12, 14. And that would not be possible without the collaboration that's long-standing now with the Centers for Disease Control.
And appreciate your work at NIH. And the CDC does vital work for the nation, yeah?
Correct.
And I know, Dr. Rogers, you don't produce the budget request, so this is not directed at you personally. But I want to raise once again for the committee and the public my bitter opposition to the Trump administration's proposal to cut the CDC budget by more than half in fiscal year 26, which will have a devastating impact on epidemiological defense and health research to defend the American public from deadly diseases. And I would note, Madam Chair, that the administration's budget request proposes to eliminate entirely the CDC's diabetes division responsible for data collection and research, and to eliminate entirely the CDC's division of nutrition, physical activity, and obesity. And I will fight this effort to destroy the CDC with everything I have as a member of the United States Senate. And if we, on a bipartisan basis in the Senate, do not defeat this effort to gut the CDC, the American people will pay for it in lives, in suffering, for decades to come. And I want to thank you again, Dr. Rogers, for your work at the NIH, and respectfully request your assurance that any information that the committee may need in order to better understand your activities and also your collaboration with the CDC and the vital role that the CDC plays in defending the nation, you'll provide to the best of your ability to this committee. Do I have that assurance?
You have it, Senator.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. I want to ask you also about ensuring that diverse communities across the United States have access to information and treatment. I note with concern that of course, diabetes impacts every community in the United States. In Georgia, the Hispanic community, Hispanics in Georgia are about 1.5 times more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes. There was a project at the University of Georgia, an NIH grant had been awarded to help develop new tools with language access, bilingual and multilingual tools to help improve the Hispanic community's access to information about diabetes, about staying on top of insulin and blood sugar levels and treatment, as well as to be able to diagnose diabetes earlier. Can you speak broadly, please, Dr. Rogers, to the importance of ensuring that diagnostic tools and treatment information are widely accessible to diverse communities across the United States?
Well, I would say that goes without saying that my current director has mentioned that at his hearing, that we want to make sure that advances in medical treatments serve all communities.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers, and I'll be following up with the director's office about this canceled grant to the University of Georgia. Again, I know that's not your decision and your prerogative, but appreciate your work on behalf of the American people and your presence here at the hearing today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'm delighted to call on my friend and colleague, Senator Hoeven. I would note that there's a roll call vote on, so I believe that Senator Hoeven will be our last questioner, and then we'll wrap up this great hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I noticed that you're perfectly color coordinated with our Children's Congress.
That's on purpose.
I knew it. I knew it. It's not only why you're a good chairman, but it truly reflects the empathy that you have, and I know how much you care.
Thank you.
And how hard you work to be a strong advocate for all of these young people and many others. I do want to acknowledge right off the bat that Nina Kritzenberger from Hillsborough, North Dakota, I think is here somewhere. Nina, are you here? I know I'm going to meet with you later, but I think she's here someone with all of you, and I want to thank you all for coming and let you know there's somebody here from my state, and I look forward to meeting with her later on today. But it's truly inspirational to see all of you, and you make a difference. You make a difference. Good for you. Ruby, I'd like to start with you speaking out. Just tell me, what are some of the biggest challenges that you face that you wish more people, and particularly we as lawmakers, understood when it comes to type 1 diabetes?
I think just how hard it is to have to think about it all the time. I know this has been said a couple times, but you don't get a break from it, ever. And as Katie said, even when you're sleeping, you don't get a break from it. It might go away for a couple hours when you're asleep, but then as soon as it beeps, it wakes you back up and it starts all over again. I just want people to know that it affects so many people, not just the people here, but their families and the millions of other people who also have type 1 diabetes.
I understand. Rachel, your story helps understand, you've got a demanding academic schedule, participating in athletics, all those kind of things. So tell us tell us about your support systems, both at home and in school. And I think that's something that is informative not only for us as policymakers, but for others in the room. What are the support systems, both home and school, that have really helped you accomplish all the things that you're doing?
Yeah, I'm very grateful to have my mom and dad right back here, and they're very helpful. especially with changing my pods and my continuous glucose monitors. I have it right here on my arm. And they're very helpful with helping me managing it and reminding me if I'm going low or going high. And especially, I'm a high-level tennis player, and especially during a tennis match when I can't always be looking at my number when I'm in the middle of a match. And my mom especially, she helps me by making sure I know when to have juice if I'm going low or giving me insulin, and I'm very grateful to have them. They're awesome parents.
My daughter played tennis, and she didn't have diabetes, but she played tennis, and her mom was her biggest supporter and advocate. And she always, when in those tough matches, she would always say, bear down, bear down. And I don't know if my daughter liked it, but I think it worked. Does your mom have a certain saying or anything to encourage you?
I don't know if she has a certain saying, but she's definitely always in my corner cheering. Even in the not so great moments or when I'm not playing my best, she's always in my corner, always cheering me on and always supporting me.
Yep, yep. That's awesome. That's awesome. And then, you know, speaking of athletics, obviously, Katie, I mean, amazing, you know, what you can do. I always kind of wanted to be a ninja warrior, but fell woefully short. So I really admire you. You know, what would you say to, obviously, you've shown and are showing that anybody can accomplish whatever they truly set their mind to do. How would you advise people to be successful, to have the kind of determination and grit it takes to accomplish whatever they want? I mean, what would be the advice that you would give them?
To never give up. If it's something that you really want to do, like, it's not necessarily going to be easy, but it is going to be worth it. My sports as it is, like, outside of diabetes, getting to the point that I've gotten has been very hard. I'd be up at 5 a.m. I'd go to strength and conditioning. I would go to school, and then I'd be at the gym for 6 hours and get home and still have to do school and try and recover and go to bed. And then on top of that, I still have diabetes. So it has taken so much work and years to get to the point that I'm at. And for diabetes, everybody here, and I've gotten a lot of comments about this, that I make it look easy, and it's not. So it's okay to struggle, and it's okay to feel the emotions and to feel not okay, but that it is worth it, and getting to your goals and what you have always dreamed of doing is worth it. And for me, I've wanted to go to the Olympics since I was 3 years old, and that is something that I have never stopped reaching for, even though there's been more bumps in the road than anybody will ever know.
So I think you summed that up so well, and I think for anyone listening, the work ethic and what goes into achieving, what goes into winning. I love football, and the Chicago Bears were, a long time ago, really good, and they had a coach by the name of Mike Ditka. And he said there's a lot more to winning than just wanting to. You've summed up perfectly all the hard work. The hard work.
For sure. People see the trophies and the goals and the records, but they don't see the amount of tears and hard work that it takes to get to that point, and what I've had to do to get to that point. So yeah, to never give up, because if it's what you want, it's very worth it.
Right on. I don't think anybody could have said it better or demonstrated it better. Thanks so much. Thanks to all of you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Senator. I want to end this hearing on a very hopeful note. And really, Katie summed it up best when she said, never give up. I want to assure you that we are your champions, and we will never give up until there's a cure. And in the decades that I personally worked on this issue, from when I first founded the Senate Diabetes Caucus way back in 1997, I can't tell you the progress that has been made. I think of those old heavy pumps that used to be lugged around, and now we have the continuous glucose monitor. That was because of the federal investments in research. We've heard Dr. Rogers talk about the exciting new medication that can delay the onset for as much as 3 years of type 1 diabetes for those who are prone to it. We know that there's research underway, even as we meet here, that is the pathway, one of the pathways to ultimately discovering a cure. And I want to thank all of you for being here today, particularly our witnesses who did such a fabulous job. Ruby, Rachel, Katie, Dr. Rogers, thank you so much for being here and for doing a wonderful job. So our hearing record will remain open until July 16th for any additional questions or materials that may be submitted. Let me just have my final statement be a thank you to all the delegates who are here. See the difference you made? I've already got more co-sponsors for a bill that I just put in with Senator Shaheen yesterday. So keep up the good work. Thank you so much. This hearing is now adjourned.